Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We've had the Austin Grand Prix. It's that time where we go through and rate each and every one of the drivers, how they got on over the whole weekend. And it's a difficult one because we get, well, mixed stories from the sprint to the race. And we'll start straight with it with the race winner, Charles Leclerc, with a tremendous race, isn't it? It all fell into place right at turn one. He'd been banking on sort of a Max and Norris stumble, and he took absolute full advantage from fourth place. I think it was probably Carlos Sainz, the one that's probably a bit most disappointed with that, because he was in third place, probably was most primed, or he thought most primed to take advantage of any slip-ups there. But Charles Leclerc from there on drove a brilliant race. He was so fast in the first stint, got a comfortable lead on Max Verstappen, and then from there on just managed it. Was effectively all he said was just manage it to the end. He didn't have a great sprint race, in fact, but that was probably the only downside of his weekend. But it was a really solid performance, from fourth to first. Really good strategy call, took advantage of the clean air, and well, we didn't see them win the race at all, did we? But an absolutely dominant performance from him. I'm going for a 10 out of 10 because it was just, well, phenomenal and surprising. It was, didn't see that one coming at all going into the weekend, and Ferrari pulled off a brilliant one. Second place, his teammate Carlos Sainz, and he was actually tremendous all weekend, wasn't he? His sprint race was brilliant. Got second place, beat Lando Norris, which was kind of the signs of Ferrari will be in this race because they were quick from where they started. Got a poor sprint qualifying session, probably the only downside of their weekend. And yeah, Carlos Sainz absolutely maxed it. And like Charles Leclerc, he had a bit more work to do in the race. He got past, he was very, very racy at the start, wasn't he? All over the back of Max Verstappen. And then it was a shame the safety car came when it did, because it looked like he probably would have made that move early doors. It wasn't to be. He got the undercut, which was a good strategy call from Ferrari. And actual fact, actually, it looked like the long first stint was probably the best way to go when we look at some of the other cars. Carlos Sainz made it work. I think that Ferrari was just so good. And then started hunting down his teammate. Probably had just lost a bit too much of a gap early doors, and was probably a bit too much to do when you've got similar machinery to try and chase and have that fight for the win. It's a shame we kind of didn't get that, but a Ferrari one too. Carlos Sainz was a brilliant 2 second place finishes both weekends. He was a little bit disappointed because he thought this was probably one that he could win for Ferrari before he leaves the team, which is a real shame. But Williams have got an absolute cracking driver on their hands here, haven't they? I'm going for a 10 out of 10 because it was 10s for both the sprint and the race. Third place finisher Max Verstappen, and well, he had, again, a mixed weekend, didn't he? I suppose brilliant qualifying sprint and a sprint race where he just, a brilliant lap. I think that was Max Verstappen just pulling it all out the bag, wasn't it, when it counted, and got pole and then led from start to finish in the sprint race. In the race, though, was a bit surprising how their pace dropped off. They'll be looking over their shoulders. They've been beaten comfortably by the Ferraris, and should have been beaten by Lando Norris also, but you can only be all the more happy. One race down, only 5 to go, which means less points on the table. He's extended his gap to Lando Norris in the title, although not massively, but it still counts. Every point from here on in is crucial, he knows that, and as long as he can finish now next to Lando Norris for any time in the championship or any of the next 5 races, the title is his. It looks like it's the way the Red Bull has got on top of things. Still looks like they've got a bit of work to do on that, but they're kind of back in the hunt now, aren't they? They're no longer looking at 6th, 7th places, which we've seen like in Baku and other races before that where Max has struggled. So they look like they've got over that hill. We had that whole Bibgate drama, which seemed a bit of a nonsense in the end. I'll be surprised if more comes off that the way that it actually works. But yeah, let's see and watch the space on that. But Max Verstappen was absolutely fantastic. He maximised what he could. Brilliant defence against Lando Norris. Did what he had to do. I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10 because, I don't think his race was as good, but his sprint was fantastic, which I gave him a 10. Gave him a 6 for the race actually, and well, in the middle, 8 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. Then comes 4th place finish, Lando Norris, the title contender, and well, 2 mixed races. His sprint actually was pretty decent. He had a poor qualifying session and a brilliant start, didn't he? Got himself up into 2nd place, and it's kind of the start he needed for the race. Well, just to keep the lead would have been fantastic enough for Lando Norris. Shame he lost out with the mistake to Carlos Sainz at the end of the sprint race, and these are the mistakes, like we've been saying all season, Max Verstappen, if ever, makes. Rarely, if ever. And yeah, Lando Norris has done it again, hasn't he? Lets more points slip away from him. Locked a break on the last lap, and I think if he'd not done that, I think he probably just had enough to hold back Carlos Sainz. It was only one lap that they had to do that, so he was really kicking himself for that, lost more points. And then in the race, well, it was a brilliant qualifying lap to get that on pole in the initial phase. Got a bit lucky with the yellow flag. But that's, you know, you need these little small things to go with you. But in the race, this race start was so bad. I mean, I still can't believe that he gave him the inside line despite kind of half blocking him off. He had to go the full distance and just hug that white line. Let Max go around the outside, and what will be from there. If he passes off track to be seen, it's a penalty, or he has to give up the position, and he would have been in a much stronger position, and probably with Ferraris behind him, or at least one of them anyway. And the Ferraris were so quick that they would have comfortably beaten Max Verstappen, and Lando Norris then had a chance potentially to fight off at least one Ferrari, which, if buts, maybe it didn't happen. But yeah, really disappointing overall in the end from Lando Norris. He did make that race, because the battle finally we got with Norris and Max Verstappen was really good racing, really good to watch. Mistake probably when he passed Max Verstappen on the outside to not give that place back. Well, it kind of it's a 50-50 one. It's hard to judge, isn't it? Because he gained 4.2 seconds on Max Verstappen over that last lap and a half, 2 laps, and well, 0.9, and he would have got that 3rd place despite the penalty. So again, I can see probably why they did that, but when you look at that, the gap that he pulled over 2 laps on Max Verstappen, it shows the car deficit he had over Max, and probably should have made that move a little bit more comfortable than he did. Or should he have just kind of looked like what he was doing down the straight? Wasn't he going to let Max through, and then decided to close the door last minute on him, and then just raced away? So it was a bit of a strange one there. Did he lose enough time down, sort of slowing, to potentially let Max through before he kind of changed his mind? You know, could that have been the 9/10 he was looking for? Potentially, who knows? Again, more if buts maybe for Norris. It kind of overall, you just kind of leave a little bit of a disappointment feel, don't you? Because it was another race where McLaren had the faster car over Max Verstappen, but come away with less points, and definitely more so in the race. He started on pole, and then to finish 4th. I think he can only be disappointed. I don't think he probably had the pace to fight off Charles Leclerc, but he could have done something maybe against Carlos Sainz. But could have definitely beaten Max Verstappen, and it wasn't to be. I'm not going to say the title fight is over for him, but you can see now we've got 2 Ferraris in the mix, and so if he wins and then you get 2 Ferraris behind and a Max, then the point swing is large, and so there's still quite a long way to go. I know it's only 5 races, but when you look at the points, it looks bigger than it is. I mean, 43 points is what we saw, which is equivalent to what Raikkonen overturned in 2 races when he beat Lewis Hamilton in 2007. And so, you know, if he can get down to them sort of point range in the last couple of races, anything can happen. So, yes, it looks big at the moment, but like I say, anything can happen. A DNF, an issue, anything, and it just changes the title fight one way or another. Lando Norris, get to the rating. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Yeah, a little bit disappointed with his race start in the end. 5th place finish for Oscar Piastri, and he followed home his teammate. Wasn't one of his best weekends, was it, Oscar Piastri? Never really got into the rhythm or flow, was easily slower than Lando Norris, and kind of not up there with the edge. He had a really good sprint race. I give him a 9 out of 10 for that. I thought that was a really good performance from him in the comeback. But in the race, it was a solid job. And as soon as he put on them hards, he just seemed to drop away completely, didn't he? It didn't look like he was ever going to challenge anywhere past where he finished. So yeah, a bit of a so-so race in the end. I'm giving him a 7 out of 10 as well, which is going to sound strange, but his sprint race really is what pulled up his scoring in this one. But yeah, there we have it, a so-so race from Oscar. I'm sure there'll be more to come from him in the next races. 6th place finisher George Russell from a pit lane start, which is absolutely tremendous. Hats off to him. It was so good, wasn't it? It was up to P15, lap 13, made a really good start. The dive bomb on Valtteri Bottas is absolutely joke. Got a 5-second penalty for that. We've seen Oscar Piastri do something fairly similar. We've seen Max Verstappen do that to Fernando Norris on the first lap. No penalty there, and well, the inconsistency of the stewarding was so bad in Austin. It's probably why we should probably have some more permanent stewards in Formula 1 rather than these unpaid guys that just come on and make random strange decisions like we've seen. Yeah, it was really disappointing for that reason, but well, despite that, he came back and beat Sergio Perez in the Red Bull. It was a really brilliant drive from him. His sprint race wasn't so good at all, was it? He was up in 2nd place, and I think he just pushed too hard on the tyres, fell away, and he was lucky just to hold off Lewis Hamilton in the end. But yeah, made all in the sprint, in the main race, with an absolutely brilliant drive. On the fresher tyres with a few laps to go, he just absolutely on a charge and beats Sergio Perez right on the last lap, which was really good to watch. An 8 out of 10 for me. It was really so good. 2 contrasting races, the sprint and the race for George Russell. I mean, even he crashed in qualifying, so to come back from the pit lane, I mean, just a really good result to pick up 6th place and beat Sergio Perez. I think that was a tremendous drive from him. Next up, Sergio Perez. He finished in 7th place, started in 9th. He had a difficult weekend, I have to say. I mean, even in the sprint race, he was way down, out of the points. He finished in 9th, so low rating for him there. In the race, he was stuck behind Yuki Tsunoda for a fair number of laps in a much faster car, and then we got stuck behind Franco Colapinto, who, I mean, you can see he admires him from the back, doesn't he? He's had some tough racing trying to pass that guy before. We've seen that in Monza, we've seen it in the race in Austin also. So yeah, another really poor race from Sergio Perez. Seems to just pile pressure on himself, isn't he? Like, the man that's charged to come in and replace him, Liam Lawson, had an absolute cracker, and Sergio Perez is getting beat by a man that started in the pits. Yeah, he just seems to have really lost his way. We thought, you know, after the decent Baku race, which ended in massive disappointment, could have been one he could have won. Even a podium would just cheer things up, bring some, you know, high to his performances. He's just really just lost his way completely, hasn't he? Next up is home race in Mexico. He can just really hope the home crowd gives him the boost that he really definitely needs, gets his confidence up, and he can hopefully pull off a decent result there. But this weekend was absolutely one to forget for me. I gave him a 3 out of 10 for the sprint. I gave him a 1 out of 10 for the race. I was so disappointed in him. Averaged out a 2 out of 10 for Sergio Perez. 8th place finisher in the race, Nico Hülkenberg. And well, he had not probably one of his better weekends, did he, at all? He was out qualified by Kevin Magnussen, who looked like the man that was bringing home all the points. But yeah, Hülkenberg followed his teammate behind in the sprint race. Was a decent result there. I give him a 6 out of 10 for that. And in the main race, well, it all came to him, didn't it? Started 11th, finished in 8th in the end. Some solid, good points for the team. Went long on his stop. The overcut worked on Pierre Gasly. They seem to go backwards in the Alpine on the hards, but the Haas is absolutely flying now. 4 races with points. It's the most points consistently in 4 races, is probably their best ever. So hats off to Haas. They've been brilliant, haven't they, this season? They're really showing what they're made of. They've now leapfrogged the Racing Bulls in the Constructors' Championship, which where they were last year. It's been a big turnaround for them. The car last year, what Gunther Steiner worked on, has worked tremendously well. They've got the new partnership with Toyota. All things looking up for Haas, and well, a really good Austin Grand Prix, their best ever home performance, and well, the Eagle really flew on that car, didn't it? It was a really good, solid performance from Nico Hülkenberg. Some good points for the team. Overall, I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. 9th place man, Liam Lawson. Well, this guy started in 19th place with all the penalties in the world. A 60 place grid drop meant he was definitely last on the grid to come home 9th, which was a really good strategy call. He got a brilliant start, didn't he? Made up a good chunk, 5 places, and he was on the right tyre there on the hards. Went really long. The strategy worked brilliantly. Ended up ahead of his teammate who had all the battles in the world. I felt sorry for Yuki a little bit because he was just in a fight everywhere, dogfight all the way through the race, and he comes home with no points. But Lawson, well, yeah, beats his teammate in his first race back, takes Daniel Ricciardo's seat, who, you know, we were all disappointed to see him go, but Lawson really put his name down and said, this is why I've taken this seat. It was brilliant. And well, he had 2 contrasting races. His sprint wasn't good at all, was it? I gave him a 4 out of 10 for that sprint race, but his main race was, I gave him a 10 out of 10 to pick up 10 points, 10 places from 19th in a car that we've seen all season. Hasn't been good. It wasn't fantastic in this race either, but it was much better. To come home and pick up a couple of points is absolutely fantastic from Lawson. Really settled the nerves. Nothing really expected of him. He had, you know, with all the penalties, Christian Horner was kind of saying like he's got an easy, no pressure race in, and he took full advantage of it, isn't it? No pressure, and he just delivered. This guy is definitely going places, and with performances like that, I would really be surprised if Sergio Perez continues his dip in performance, that this guy doesn't step up and take that seat. It was a really solid drive. I'll give him a 10 out of 10 for the race. I'm going to give him overall an 8 out of 10 considering the 2 contrasting races, but a really solid job from him. A 10th place finish for Franco Colapinto. Now, this guy is an absolute megastar, isn't he, in the making? The only big shame here is he hasn't really got a race seat yet. And if he gets one, the only place is Sauber, and they don't look like they're going anywhere fast. But boy, has he earned himself a seat in Formula 1, hasn't he? Everyone was questioning the decision from Williams when they dropped Logan Sargent to pick up another rookie who thought, you know, with crashes, what's he going to do? Well, it's all paid off, hasn't he? He's beaten Alex Albon in qualifying already. He's beaten him in the race. Brings home the sole point for the Williams team, a much needed point for the Williams team, in fact, because well, it looked like Alpine with Pierre Gasly's performance at one stage would be leapfrogging them in the constructors, and well, Franco beats an Alpine, they drop no points and they extend their lead over them. He had a mixed sprint race, wasn't a great one. I gave him a 5 out of 10 for that, but in the main race I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I gave him a 9 out of 10 from 15th place to pick up a point was absolutely tremendous. He got a good start, got himself up to 13th place, was up to P7 ahead of Sergio Perez, held him off really well for such a long time, and then to pick up the point in the end, it was absolutely brilliant. Was just 4 seconds back of Liam Lawson in the end. Hats off to him. It's a shame that there's not really a seat out there for him. There's just the one left at Sauber. Interesting to see if he gets that seat. Do you want that seat? It's not really the car that's going to make you shine, isn't it? Even if you pull off a good performance, we don't really know. They're at the back anyway. When we look at the difference between Joe and Bottas, it's hard to see who's doing a better job there when they're just so far way at the back. But yeah, this guy really has put his name in the hat for a seat should one pop up. A brilliant job from me. Overall, an 8 out of 10 for Franco. 11th place finisher Kevin Magnussen, and K-Mag had a brilliant start to the weekend, wasn't it? A really good qualifying session for the sprint, beat his teammate, and in the sprint race brought home the car ahead of his teammate. A really good performance there. For the main race, he outqualified Hülkenberg again, which has normally been Hülken's Hulkenberg's strongest points, hasn't he? But so K-Mag was really on it. An 8th place start, but the race kind of just went really badly wrong for him, wouldn't it? You thought the undercut would work. It did work. He got ahead of Pierre Gasly. But when you look back now, the undercut was probably the wrong way to go. It was a bit of a sitting duck in the end. And then we had the strange call for that stop, didn't we? Where he was that unscheduled and he made 2 stops and just dropped him out of the points. A real shame. Did he have a puncture? Was there any issues? I'm not too sure of that. Or was it just that the guys behind would put on some fresh mediums and they thought he's going to be in a sitting duck anyway, and that was probably the cut-off lap of you either pit now or you struggle to the end and see what you can make of it. They made the last call decision and it didn't really work out for him. Probably deserved a lot more over the whole weekend. He's put a solid performance. He's another guy without a seat for next year, and one looks like he's heading out of his way of Formula One. There doesn't look really anywhere to go. There's 3 guys, Bottas, him, Franco, all fighting it out for that Sauber seat. Who knows who will end up where. But yeah, a really solid performance from K-Mag, shown really what he's all about. It's a shame he didn't pick up some points in the end. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for him for this weekend. 12th place finish for Pierre Gasly. He had a phenomenal qualifying session. To pick that car up and put it in 6th place was absolutely phenomenal. That car's never been anywhere near the top 10, has it, all season? So and we've seen Ocon was miles away from him this weekend. Gasly was on it, absolutely on a charge. It was a shame in the race because he got undercut by Kevin Magnussen, got overcut by Nico Hulkenberg. He said as soon as he put on them hard tyres, it just didn't like it at all, their car, and they went backwards. A difficult race in the end, got a little bit scruffy, didn't he? Got a 5-second penalty for going off track and gaining an advantage against Yuki Tsunoda. All a bit scruffy. Finished without some points. I think it was always going to be difficult for him to keep points. Hard to rate this guy because, well, that car just was never going to be there. He's outdone that car. Didn't have a great sprint though, so I give him 5 out of 10. Overall, I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. I think it was fairly solid, and then mostly down to that qualifying session, which was absolutely brilliant from him. 13th place finish, Fernando Alonso, and it's been a horrible weekend for them. His sprint race was really poor, started way down, didn't he? And in the race, he had a really good qualifying session to keep himself up into 7th place, but he was saying that he's just going to be looking over his shoulders the whole race, and just keep position or stay in the top 10 would be phenomenal, but it all went wrong right at the start, didn't he? Dropped 3 places, was back in P10, and from there on it was just really a sitting duck. He was looking over his shoulder the whole race. Dropped 3 more places, did Fernando Alonso, beaten by Lawson, Russell. Just one to forget. A 4 out of 10 for him. 14th place finish for Yuki Tsunoda, and well, this is a really disappointing one for him. And he had a really good qualifying session, started 10th, and he had a good start to the race. He was up into 8th place, then got a 5-second penalty for forcing a driver off track, and then he had that strange spin at turn 1 towards the just past midpoint or towards the end of the race, didn't he? Ended up P14. Just to be disappointed. He was so surprised at how his teammate ended up ahead of him in the first stops, and I think that's because Yuki lost so much time in the scraps, didn't he? Had a good fight with Sergio. Perez held him off really well in the early parts, but I think that probably was start the downfall. Probably just took too much out of his tyres to keep him back, and to finish behind his teammate, which looked like he was on for a really good weekend overall, Yuki. But yeah, ended up with disappointment in the sprint, disappointment in the race. I've given him a 4 out of 10. Much work for him to do, and I'd kind of really like this guy to be the man in the Red Bull in the main seat. I absolutely love him as a character, but he just needs to cut out these niggly odd mistakes. 15th place finisher Lance Stroll started in a decent 13th place, was up well in the start of the race, wasn't he, picking off position, but then on the restart dropped it, went strangely off track. Didn't see a full replay of what happened with him there, but that dropped him back to 18th place. I'd say he recovered well back to 15th from where he was. the Aston Martin hasn't been great, and it's really disappointing because they've stuck an awful lot of upgrades on that car, and they've again gone backwards. Don't seem to understand what to do with that car, do they? Horrible weekend for Aston Martin. Again, Lance Stroll also a 4 out of 10 for me. 16th place finisher Alex Albon, and it was a tough weekend for him, isn't it? The sprint race didn't go well for him at all. The main race was poor. He got damaged right into the turn 1. It was a classic sort of Austin first lap turn 1 incident, wasn't it, where 3 into 1 doesn't go, got trapped, and then it looked like from there on he had damage. He felt back. He was running P19, and managed to pick up some good places in the end, but he'll be really disappointed. His teammates come home and nick 10th place, and he's a more experienced senior man in that team. I'm sure he'll come good. He's had 2 back-to-back horrible weekends. I'm sure the next time out he's not got long to dwell on it, straight into the next race to put things right. And Alex is a strong character. We've seen that, where he's been down in the dumps before at Red Bull, but he's revived his career. He's a strong man. I'm sure he'll come back strong with a decent performance next time out. But this one, a one to forget. And overall, I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. 17th place finish for Valtteri Bottas. He wasn't last man again, was he? Which was probably the best that he can hope for in that car. Dropped back to P18 at one stage in the race. Managed to beat Ocon. I think that's purely because Ocon went to pit to nick the fastest lap of Franco Colapinto, who had it at that time. But other than that, this Sauber has really struggled, aren't they? They're so far down on anybody in that field. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it, actually? And they are a team that really needs some big upgrades. It's kind of like this stalling of waiting for Audi to come in and take over and put things right. They just seem to be in no man's land a little bit, isn't it? They've not really bought anything that's made them go faster or build a car up closer to the field. An awful lot of work to be done, and then the only ones with one space left in that seat. Nico Hülkenberg's going there next, and well, he'll be really hoping that they can turn things around big time there. For Valtteri, a 4 out of 10 wasn't a good weekend, but I mean, kind of what are we expecting when he's been given such a dog of a car? 18th place Esteban Ocon, and well, he's been comfortably beaten by his teammate. He was unlucky in the turn 1 incident, got hit by Alex Albon, and from there on he dropped last, ran towards the back for most of the time there, and then when he seen the Williams of Franco have the fastest lap, he was in 10th place, so would have got an extra point. He pitted and then went for the soft, stole the fastest lap off the Williams, and ended up behind a Sauber. So pretty much got used just for the team's advantage in the race. These things happen when you're so far down, but he really kind of almost put himself in that position to be that fall guy, didn't he? He just wasn't good at all at any point in the weekend, comfortably beaten by Ocon. He really kind of had his head out of that team now, doesn't he? It can't come soon enough, the end of the season for him. 19th place, Zhou Guanyu. I'd give 4 out of 10 for Ocon for this weekend. 19th place, Zhou Guanyu, and well, what can you say? He had a spin. He's just absolutely nowhere, isn't he? Last and stayed last from there on, didn't he? It wasn't probably expecting anything more than that. He's now been comfortably beaten by Valtteri Bottas. You kind of would expect that with a more experienced teammate, but if you're the man that kind of is meant to be the young rising star and hoping to keep a seat in the Formula One, he kind of needs to show something. Potential that he could keep that seat yet. It's all the big backing, isn't it, from China that's helping him potentially keep that seat. The performances on track from him haven't been good at all, but I'm giving him a 4 out of 10. And then comes the DNF, Lewis Hamilton. He had a stinker of a race, didn't he? Race lasted all of 2 laps, but his whole weekend was poor, wasn't it? Out in Q1, he was absolutely nowhere for the race or qualifying. Even in the sprint race, he was kind of in no man's land, didn't he? Couldn't beat his teammate who had hammered tyres. Came home 6th there. Not a great sprint qualifying either. Normally he goes so well here. It was a really uncharacteristic mistake from him to drop it in the race. Toto saying that it was probably definitely something wrong with that car. Lewis Hamilton doesn't do mistakes like that. He's never spun out of a race early on, so yet to find out exactly what happened on Lewis's car, but overall well, a really poor weekend from him. I've given him a 6 out of 10 for the sprint, a 1 out of 10 for the qualifying race combination overall, and giving him a 4 out of 10. Probably just in the middle of where that lies, but yeah, not a great weekend for Lewis Hamilton at all. And there we have it. Let's get to the predictions review. And well, I should hide here, shouldn't I? Because I've predicted a strong weekend for the McLaren and Norris. I thought Lando Norris would win the sprint. Max Verstappen stole that. I thought Verstappen would be second. Well, he stole a winner. I think it was a brilliant drive from him. And I thought Lewis Hamilton would come home third, and he's probably had his worst race of his career, hasn't he? For Lando Norris, it was Verstappen, Sainz and Norris in the sprint in that order. In qualifying, I thought it would be a McLaren 1-2. Boy, was I wrong there. Norris did get pole position, but luckily so. Piastri was way down, and I thought it would be Lewis Hamilton in third for the qualifying, but it was Charles Leclerc. In the race, I thought it'd be a McLaren 1-2. It was a Ferrari 1-2. I thought it'd be Norris, Piastri and Hamilton. Leclerc and Sainz stole the show in that Ferrari. They were absolutely tremendous. It was so good to see. And Max Verstappen effectively stole that third place of Lando Norris, didn't he, in the end? So yeah, I've got one prediction right out of all of the 9 positions that I've picked. I thought it'd be a good weekend for McLaren. It definitely wasn't. I thought it'd be a bad race weekend for the Red Bull. It wasn't actually, was it? Max Verstappen, a pole position in the sprint, a win in the sprint, and he beats his teammate home in the race. What more could he ask for? One more race down, and well, off to Mexico we go next. It should be a fantastic race there. The atmosphere is always brilliant, and there's an awful lot on the line, isn't there, now with just 5 races to go. 3-horse race for the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari now just 8 points behind Red Bull, 48 points behind leaders McLaren, and if they can pull off performances like this with a pair of them, they'll be right on the back of both McLaren and overtake Red Bull well easily by the end of Mexico. Who knows? It's a fantastic championship because right now you just don't know who's going to turn up with what machinery at what race. It's phenomenal. F1 is on an absolute high and a wave. It's just a shame that Max Verstappen stole an early lead in the championship, because otherwise I think it'd be a really tight battle up there at the front. But there we have it, a brilliant Austin Grand Prix. So much side-to-side action, overtaking, really thriller of a weekend. The sprint was brilliant. It didn't give too much away for the race. The race was had everything, didn't it? Crash, safety car, spins, controversy at the end with Norris and Verstappen overtake a Ferrari 1-2, which was tremendous. But there we have it. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment. As always, watch out for the Mexico preview next. See you then.